Welcome back, everyone, to the Wood Elf lore series, in which bit by bit we'll be examining every aspect of the Azrai of the Warhammer universe. Last time, I told the tales of their history, and you can click on the annotation here to learn all about that. For now, we'll be delving into the geography of Athel Loren, which includes learning about the 12 realms, the hidden paths, major locations, and a few other subjects. So without further ado, let's begin. When talking about the land of Athel Loren, the absolute first subject that must be addressed is that of the Eternal Realms. For those unaware, the Wood Elves realm is split into 12 kingdoms, each ruled by great lords and ladies of the Great Council. For long ago, back when the Azrai first came to live within the Great Forest, there existed numerous proud families known as kindreds. Rivalries sprung up freely among them, for each held their own ideologies and traditions, and conflict was rife. As the years passed, however, their bond with the forest grew, and its influence united the kindreds in common cause. It only took a few hundred years before there remained only 12 distinct kindreds, who each claimed a realm befitting of them. All of these lands are truly unique in their own ways, and here we shall examine them in detail. The first of the 12 kingdoms we'll be examining is Talzin, which is ruled by Lord Areloth the Bold. Greatest among the Eternal Realms in both prosperity and might is Talzin, also known as the Groves of Eternity. Ever have its warriors formed the backbone of Athel Loren's greatest armies, striving to the aid of the other kingdoms more often than not. The other lords and ladies of the Great Council are quite resentful of this status, as they claim it comes from both the King's Glade and the Oak of Ages lying within Talzin's boundaries. There may be some truth to this, but while many nobles envy Lord Areloth for his prestige, few want for his burdens. In addition, nowhere in Athel Loren is there such a powerful bond between the forest spirits and the elves as within the Groves of Eternity. It was this region of the forest that the elder tree man Adonhu claimed as his home, and since his death the other spirits have endeavored to honor his vision of coexistence. Not that the Dryads can be described quite as friendly, but they at least refrain from the kidnapping of elf children that is so rife in the other kingdoms. It is also within Talzin that the nexus of the world roots can be found. Long before chaos came into the world, the Oak of Ages stretched its roots all around the world to the many forests scattered across the continents. The forest spirits used to travel them freely, wandering through the living pathways to visit the woods of Ulthuan and beyond. Alas, most of these routes are now closed due to either the world roots themselves being sundered by tragedy, or because the forests at the far end have been destroyed or corrupted by the works of barbarous races. However, the Azrai can still use the world routes to reach lands as far as Chil Nagaroth, should the desperate need arise. The next of the kingdoms we shall be looking at is Aranok, which is ruled by Lord Amadri Ironbark. Unlike most places in Athel Loren, some of the 12 kingdoms are so steeped in magic that they remain forever trapped in a particular season or time of day. One such place is Aranok, also known as the Summer Strand. Winter never comes to the verdant reaches of the Summer Strand. Here, the glades are always draped by warm sunlight all year round. Likewise, night rarely falls in this part of the forest, and even when it does, the hours of darkness are brief. Thus, the forest spirits of this realm are eternally vibrant, for as the seasons never pass here, they remain at the height of their strength. The elves of this kingdom are generous, and are known for hosting lavish feasts for even the smallest of things. They are also uniquely welcoming to outsiders that do not seek to harm the forest, quickly inviting these lost souls to join in the festivities. Many of these interlopers are quite resistant at first, but upon their first sip of spring wine, the resistance quickly melts away. Due to this, many guests have remained in Aranok for centuries, eating, drinking, making merry, and rarely noticing the passing of time. few ever notice their elven feast partners changing as the hours and days slip by, or that the Azrai are much more measured in their sampling of delights. Even fewer notice when their fellow guests, overwhelmed by indolence, are carried away from the feast by silent dryads. These glutted creatures are left at the entrance to the vaults of winter. Those ancient caverns are the work of a civilization far older than the elves, and are home to horrific beings that feast on the souls of those reeking of pleasure and excess. Thus do the guests of Summerstrand pass from this world, sacrificed to sate monsters whom would otherwise prey on the Azrai themselves. It would not be until 500 years before the modern age when the current Lord of Aranok, Lord Amadri Ironbark, would end this practice forever. He fell in battle against the demons of Slaanesh that had emerged from the vaults of winter, freed from their imprisonment by a raging storm of magic. Although Amadri, known as the Dawnspear in these days, was captured and tortured to death by the demonettes, his soul refused to submit. He possessed the bowl of a dead tree, thus being reborn as a treekin, and earning the epithet Ironbark. He led a host of tree spirits against the demons, purging them from Aranok, before he alone went to the vaults of winter. Using his newfound strength, Lord Ironbark pushed immense boulders from the mountains to seal its gates forever. The next kingdom we shall be looking at is Arguilin, the Moonspring Glades, which are ruled by Lord Thalandar Doomstar. A land saturated in mystical light and wonder, where the rivers are alive with naiads and the waterfalls sing with ghostly voices. It is the realm of mages and magic, of daily deeds that would be thought miraculous in other parts of the forest. This is the only corner of Athel Loren in which many of the old traditions of Ulthuan endure, and detailed historical records are maintained. It should be of little surprise then that the elves of the Moonglade consider themselves superior to all of their fellows, an attitude that endears them to neither the Azrai of other kingdoms, nor to the forest spirits of their own realm. Even the naiads of the Grismere River, who famously care little what kind of company they keep, can barely stand to talk to these Azrai. However, the great eagles of the mountains celebrate their deep friendship with the elves of Arguilin, for nowhere else in Athel Loren can the elves speak their ancient tongue. The fourth kingdom we'll be looking at is Modron, also known as the Nightglens, which is ruled by Lady Morlana and Lord Arliss. A land forever shrouded in shadow, Modron has not felt the caress of sunlight in millennia. The only light in this realm is provided by flickering sprite creatures that live among the upper branches. Shaped by the endless night, the elves and spirits of the Nightglens are spiteful, even by the standards of Athel Loren. They openly practice magic and customs forbidden in other realms, and worship gods most other Azrai rightfully shun. This was not always the case, however. Modron could once have been described as the brightest and most glorious of all Athel Loren's realms, and its inhabitants among the most welcoming. This all ceased to be during a dark time in Athel Loren's history, when a shadow and aerial soul spread throughout the forest. In time, the Queen in the Woods restored the balance in her soul and the forest, but the Nightglens never recovered. The fifth kingdom we'll take a look at is Kavarok, also known as the Skymark Reaches, which is ruled by Lord Edrial of Equos. Skymark is the land of meadowglades, the sparsely wooded grassland plains that lie on Athel Loren's southern border. The elves of Kavarok are the finest horsemasters in Athel Loren, and the first to march when the war horns are sounded. They are, however, swift to act and even swifter to anger, often overreaching themselves in mad charges to scatter enemy forces. It is little wonder they are so brash, though, as their lands are always the first to be attacked by a greedy Bretonnian duke seeking to expand his territories. In ages past, they have countered this threat by terrifying the humans into submission, but recently have turned to subtler means of substituting many of the damsels of Quenelles with shape-shifting forest spirits who sabotage their foes from within. The sixth kingdom we shall be examining is Adelwith, also known as the Winterheart, which is ruled by Skjolin of the Hooked Blade. A realm locked in the icy embrace of winter, Adelwith is forever covered in snow and frost. Pale statues line every path and mark the entrance to every hall. Some of these are beautiful sculptures carved from ice by patient artisans, while others are frost-caged naiads or kelpies, imprisoned by sorcery for past crimes or to prevent future ones. These eerie statues flow and reform when not looked upon, the creatures inside ever seeking to escape. As to be expected, very few of the forest spirits in this realm ever awaken from their slumber. The biting chill lulls them down into dreams they'll remain in until the end of time itself. Most of these creatures embrace this fate willingly, waiting for the arrival of a glorious dawn that will never come. Due to this, the connection between the Azrai of the Winterheart and the spirits is the weakest than in any of the other realms. Those spirits that do rouse rarely speak to the elves, preferring to influence their allies' thoughts and actions through dreams. Unlike the other kingdoms, Adelwith's defenses have ever relied upon the bravery and skill of the elves alone, for even the threat of destruction will not awaken the frost-covered trees to battle, as they once did. Thus do the Azrai of the Winterheart practice the arts of war with an obsession alien to the other parts of the forest. It should come as no surprise that nowhere else in Athel Loren can boast as many eternal guard as Skjolin has under his command. The next of the kingdoms we'll be looking at is Scythril, also known as the Wildwood, which is ruled by Lady Drea the Nighthawk. Not all of the forest spirits within Athel Loren dwell in harmony with the elves. Even after thousands of years of coexistence, there are some beings who actively seek the elves' destruction. Some of these creatures revel in destruction purely for the sake of malice, while others would unleash all of their cunning and strength against the Azrai if they were allowed to do so. It was to guard against this threat from within that the first of the Wood Elves planted a fence of waystones in the southeast of Athel Loren, creating the Wildwood. Essentially a prison meant to contain the most malevolent of the forest spirits. Thus can the dryads and treemen throughout the forest, as cruel as they tend to be considered the most benign of their kind. Yet the waystone fence alone isn't enough to contain all of those within. There are treemen and other elemental colossi contained, and they are more than capable of toppling a few menhirs. Losing one or two stones has little effect on the barrier, but if several adjacent waystones were felled, the breach would be wide enough for some to escape. It is the endless task of the Elves of the Wildwood to ensure that the waystones are maintained, and thus the prison kept shut. They, of course, do not live within Scythril itself, and only enter that realm under the direst of circumstances, but instead maintain their halls outside of the waystone fence. Of all the realms in Athel Loren, Scythril is the most unwelcoming to strangers, and for wise reasons. Not all of the spirits contained within the Wildwood are immense behemoths. Some are seductresses steeped in fey glamour, easily capable of manipulating those around them into their terrible embrace. Few such victims survive the experience unharmed, most having their souls devoured and replaced by creatures such as shadow naiads and deepwood fetchlings. The Wildwood Rangers are ever on the hunt for such impostors, and so most outsiders are beheaded and burned for trespassing. Better for the innocent to perish than one of these foul changelings escape to implant themselves into the courts of Athel Loren. The eighth kingdom is Tirsith, also known as the Ashen Hall, which is ruled by Lord Arda of the Parted Veil. Considered by most elves of Athel Loren to be far too somber, the Ashen Hall is a realm that reveres death. Rather than joyful song, their halls are filled with dirges of elves who live ever under the shadow of life's end. In truth, however, the Elves of Tirsith are no more fatalistic than others of their kind. They simply celebrate the end of life as much as they do its start. So do Ashenhall's elves fill their glades with intricate moonstone statues of the departed, so that they might remember and honor the deceased, even if their kin of other realms do not. For reasons unknown, the forest spirits of this kingdom respect this gesture, and the groves of treemen have sprung up around the statues of those elves beloved of the forest. It is a foolish idea indeed to attempt any transgression within such a shrine. The ninth kingdom is Widrioth, also known as the Pine Crags, which is ruled by Lord Findle and Lady Eveline. Among the realms of Athel Loren, it is the Pine Crags that are almost constantly embattled. Vengeful throngs of dwarves and sprawling raids by greenskins constantly assault the steep slopes of Widrioth. It is for this reason that this realm has been transformed by its people into a massive fortress, with great citadels and strongholds shaped from sky-crown oaks, and mighty walls of tangled thorns from rockbriar. Complex mazes and root-braced tunnels connect the numerous outposts together into a living defense network, able to even repel a full-force Waaagh. The march down into the Pine Crags is a simple affair that many a warlord has thought will lead to easy spoils, only to discover that retreating is far more difficult. Lord Findle and his court are famously bloodthirsty among the Azrai, finding great pleasure in hunting down all who would intrude upon their realm. The next of the realms we'll be looking at is Theater Darik, also known as the Trickster's Wood, which is ruled by Lady Hegria of the Mask. Theater Darik is the holy ground of the elven god known as Loek the Trickster, many shrines to his anarchic glory found beneath the bows. It is due to this that here can be found the feast halls of the war dance, one of the only gathering places for the nomadic war dancers of Athel Loren. Thus, the glades of the Trickster's Wood resound to the sound of laughter, though most of it is infamously mean-spirited. The war dancers are ever fond of deception, which in turn always requires a victim. The most famous instance of this is during the festivals of the equinox, when captives of the Azrai are promised their freedom if they can slay a war dancer in single combat. None have ever succeeded, as the devotees of Loek are peerless duelists. The true sport for the Wood Elves is not whether the victim earns his freedom, but instead how many wounds the war dancer can inflict on his opponent until they expire. Any prisoner who dies to less than 100 cuts is considered to be poor sport. The 11th realm is Torgavan, also known as the Forge of Starlight, which is ruled by Lord Daith. The Forge of Starlight is the domain of smiths and craftsmen, of the artisans and makers who create all of Athel Loren's tools of wonder and war. In the heart of Torgavan lies Val's Anvil, a shrine to the Maker God himself. Every night the trees surrounding this holy site bask in the warmth of its forge, as great works are completed within. Of course, the rippling heat draws many nearby forest spirits, who watch the smith's craft with childlike wonder, though they keep a wary distance lest they tempt the forge fire's wrath. The master of this realm, Lord Daith, is the greatest of the elven smiths. There are several rumors about the strange lord, some saying he is older than both Ariel and Orion, others claiming he forged the legendary armor of Anarion the Defender, and countless more, all hinting at a powerful yet ancient individual. If such rumors were true, of course, he would be one of, if not the oldest living elf in the world. But in places such as Athel Loren, many strange things are possible. Yet, for all his supposed age, Daith appears to be an elf in his middle years. Although blind, his ability to perform his work by touch and by the way hot metal changes the taste of the air allows him to craft wondrous works. He's also quite infamous among the Azrai for having a tongue that matches the heat of his forge. As a small spoiler to those of you who are interested in such things, it would be later revealed during the end times that Lord Daith is in fact the mortal incarnation of Vol himself. The final of the 12 kingdoms is Anmir, also known as the Witherhold, which is ruled by Lady Teveril and Lady Delina. A realm in constant decline, Anmir was not given the name of Witherhold lightly. Centuries ago, it was in the heart of this region that Morgur the Corruptor was slain, his foul blood corrupting the land for leagues around. Even Adayavok, the mighty elm that once served as the great hall of Anmir's rulers, was tainted, twisting the beauteous tree into a shriveled husk, surrounded by barren soil. Ever since that fateful day, the Azrai of Witherhold have fought a losing war of attrition against the Beastmen. Every year the war herds grow larger, increasing numbers of forest spirits are consumed by madness, and entire groves wither and die. Within the forest of Athel Loren, the loss of a single tree is a tragedy, so the horrific legacy of Morgur's blood is truly cause for endless sorrow. However, Anmir does not stand alone against the endless tides of darkness. The lords and ladies of the neighboring realms know all too well the danger of Morgur's corruption, and thus aid in any way they can to stem it. It is only within the Witherhold that elves from every realm can always be found fighting alongside one another and running battles against the children of chaos. Despite these valorous efforts, the darkness-consuming Anmir cannot be stopped by blade and bow alone. An act of incredible power would be needed to cleanse this realm, one only the gods themselves could unleash. However, their power is much depleted, if not gone entirely, and it is truly doubtful that the Witherhold will see its peril ended, and the realm's former glory restored. One of the most important things to understand when discussing Athel Loren in depth is the way that it functions quite similar to the realm of chaos in the far north. Places that are overtly saturated with magic tend to suffer from a myriad of strange occurrences that can manipulate both space and time. The Great Forest is no exception to this, for when looking at the time aspect of things, already there are numerous examples of time freezing permanently into certain seasons or times of day, such as the realms already discussed. In addition to this, time itself can flow extremely fast, slow, or even backwards beneath the mighty trees. There are many strange tales, such as the story of Duke Melman, who was lured into Athel Loren and wandered for what he thought was a short while before re-emerging. Upon returning to the mortal plane, he discovered 1,000 years had passed before aging rapidly and dying that day. There is even a stranger tale of a Grail Knight named Leofric, who forever wanders beneath the boughs of the forest, seeking to find his way back to long ago when his wife was murdered by a cruel dryad. Seemingly impossible as it may sound, he has arrived nearly in time on multiple occasions, and has often enough run into past versions of himself while on his quest. In addition to distorting time, space itself also means surprisingly little when it comes to certain parts of Athel Loren. A good example of this is throughout the forest are mysterious routes known more commonly as the Hidden Paths. Only the bravest and wisest of even the elves know how to find and traverse these ancient roads, allowing them to travel miles in an instant and outpace even the swiftest of enemies. These paths seem to traverse through some magical realm, for to stray from them often invites a fate worse than death, as the intruder becomes lost for all eternity or is devoured by some malign spirit. Yet often these ways of travel are worth the risk, allowing for unexpected ambushes and swift deliveries of crucial information. It should be also noted, however, that the hidden paths are used by more than just the wood elves, for forest spirits navigate them easily, and even the innate senses of the beastmen can detect them. From there, we're going to go ahead and move on to examining a few of the more unique and special locations scattered throughout Athel Loren. This, of course, won't be an examination of every single special place, such as Dorthu's Grove or the Hills of the Dead, but ones that have enough information that truly make them stand out. So, let's go ahead and get started. First is Yin Idril Korain, also known as the King's Glade. A vast clearing surrounded by great oak trees of immense girth and antiquity, it was here that the first elves who entered the forest elected to hold their councils and rituals. Over the centuries, the spellweavers created a city among the trees around the King's Glade. The branches of these mighty oaks were induced to entwine into walkways and canopies, awe-inspiring galleries and vaults. Thus is the entire city made of living trees that thrive around the glade. Even beneath the earth, these same methods have been used to create great hollows beneath the interwoven roots of the trees. Although vast, this great city is practically invisible to the untrained eye. It merges into the forest itself and is easily missed by idle travelers and enemies alike, for much of it is either well above their heads or beneath their feet. Furthermore, the King's Glade is disguised by powerful magic. An intruder in Athel Loren is quite likely to remain totally unaware of the city around him, and ignorant to the elven eyes observing his every move. This is of course assuming he ever stumbles on the King's Glade at all, for most strangers wander aimlessly for miles before they find themselves mysteriously emerging out of the forest. It is from the King's Glade that Ariel and Orion rule over the land of Athel Loren. They are not alone in this task, but are aided by a great council. Currently, there are 15 lords and ladies upon the Great Council, drawn from the 12 kingdoms that reside beneath the trees. To hold such a seat is considered a great honor, one that has been handed down from generation to generation, since the founding of the Wood Elves' realm. However, their authority only has any meaning whilst Ariel allows it, for no one, not even Orion, can overrule the Mage Queen if her mind is set. This has proven to be both the Azrai's greatest strength and their most crippling weakness. For while it grants the Wood Elves a unity of purpose the elves of other realms could only dream of, it can be a terrible curse should Ariel's judgment not be sound. The few times in history her heart has grown dark, the forest paid dearly indeed. Next is Yen Idri Eternos, also known as the Oak of Ages. The Oak of Ages is the spiritual heart of Athel Loren. It was underneath its ancient boughs that the realm of the Wood Elves was founded, and it is here that the yearly rituals of Orion's death and rebirth are performed. The oak itself is a mystery, save to all but Ariel herself, who spends the winter months in times of great hurt within its embrace. However, it is unknown whether during this time she resides within the tree itself or merely some great hall woven into its roots. It is beneath the branches of Yen Idri Eternos that countless generations of spellsingers have learned their sorcerous craft. Magic lies heavily around the mighty oak, its aspect changing subtly as the winds of magic rise and fall. It is at its most glorious when Gairan, also known as the Wind of Life, sweeps through the forest, and at its most sinister and twisted when Shaish, also known as the Wind of Death, is ascendant. Very few artifacts forged by the mortal races contain the magical power residing within even a single acorn from the Oak of Ages. Many spellsingers that travel to the lands beyond Athel Loren do so with such a treasure bound tightly above their heart to serve as a protective charm, a lodestone to hearth and home, and in desperate times, a reserve of power. These acorns are so potent that the Azrai must swiftly gather any which fall from the oak's sprawling branches. They only fall at the height of Gairan's power, and contain so much of the Wind of Life that they'll sprout from a sapling to a full oak in a matter of seconds. There was also a rather unfortunate event in which a squirrel of the forest ate one, only to become of such an immense size that it nearly flattened all of the King's Glade in a rampage before the combined assault of 3 realms' forces finally brought it down. Many Azrai believe that the fate of the Oak of Ages governs not only the rest of Athel Loren itself, but of their entire race. For this reason, no matter how dire the peril or terrible the foe, the Wood Elves will never allow invaders to despoil the Oak of Ages. The third location we'll be looking at is Athel Kaelin, also known as the Dreaming Wood. Within Athel Loren lies a terrible shadow, another realm that resides like a reflection of the entire forest. It is a magical realm of grim prophecies, stark terrors, and demonic malice. The Wood Elves enter the Dreaming Wood only in the most desperate of times, for they know that there is no greater way to draw thirsting Slaaneish's attention. The Dark Prince's servants are always prowling Athel Loren, searching for errant elves and attacking other demons. The Dreaming Wood can only be entered from places where magic lies heavily upon the forest. Many such portals fluctuate with the seasons, only being open during the high summer or the darkest nights of winter. Most of these locations are marked by archways of vine-tangled white stone, which serve as a warning to all that the Dreaming Wood lies beyond. Other entrances only give the warning of dark whispers on the breeze, and a slight shimmering of the air, beyond which the glades take on strangely sinister or unwelcoming aspects. Few have survived their visits to this terrible realm, those that do often becoming great heroes of Azrai folklore, such as Gwydthrall, Lord of the Nine Crags, who had to seek out a powerful artifact from each of the 12 realms to ensure his survival in the dark recesses of Athel Loren. The final interesting location we'll be taking a look at is Yin Cormac Wildrir, also known as the Wild Heath. Surrounding the great forest of the Azrai is a series of ancient waystones constructed by the first elves of these lands long ago. These standing stones form a barrier that prevent Athel Loren from expanding beyond, effectively marking this territory as the border of the Wood Elves' domain. This constantly fluctuating border is known as Yin Cormac Wildrir, or the Wild Heath. The trees constantly strain against their bonds, ever seeking to expand into new realms with wanton abandon. Some even succeed. When the forest reaches the height of its power during the summer months, it is not unheard of for the forest to break free. When this happens, spell singers and spell weavers are quick to unleash their magics to coax the trees back into their proper home, ensuring the forest stays bound. While this undoubtedly saves many Bretonnians from horrific deaths at the hands of bloodthirsty spirits, this is actually done to protect the forest itself. Athel Loren relies entirely on maintaining the careful balance of the weave to survive, which would be thrown into turmoil should the forest begin to expand. If they were allowed to roam, many of the forest trees and spirits would perish. Even worse, those that did survive the horrors of the old world would only do so by becoming as bloodthirsty and cruel as the worst servants of the dark gods. Thus, do the Azrai protect Athel Loren from itself by preserving outsiders from the forest. One of the most famous aspects of the Wood Elves is their ability to travel across the entire world in an alarmingly short time by use of a series of paths known as the World Routes. Long ago, before even the coming of chaos, the Oak of Ages spread its roots far across the world. This allowed creatures such as the forest spirits to tap into the magical might of the oak, opening a gateway and following the selected route to the end of its path to reappear in a forest that connected to Athel Loren. This allowed them to travel to anywhere in the world, any continent, and in many cases even each individual island, so long as the Oak of Ages had managed to locate a forest there, connecting even to the floating Isle of Ulthuan, for instance. However, when the hateful rage of chaos spewed across the world, many such routes were corrupted or destroyed, leaving many such gateways and paths cut off and no longer accessible. Over the millennia, the Azrai's spellweavers have also learned how to open these same paths for the elves, and in recent centuries, some have been restored by Ariel's healing touch, which allows the Wood Elves to travel to any continent in the world at the very least, though some of the further paths, such as those to Nagaroth, Lustria, or the Far East, have rather limited options due to the very few paths available. And with that, we have concluded part 2 of the Wood Elves lore series. I hope you all enjoyed the geography of Athel Loren. It was a fun video to make and had lots of what I hope is interesting and insightful information. Do keep an eye out for part 3. The gap between part 2 and part 3 will not be as large as the gap between part 1 and part 2, as most of the really niche and difficult to find lore has pretty much been covered. In part 3, we will probably be tackling either the various units that make up the armies of the Wood Elves, or we may be moving on to their pantheon, depending on a couple of things. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and although I put a message at the beginning of this video, if you have not watched part 1, which is the full history of the Wood Elves, I would highly encourage it, as this video did not recover certain aspects like who Ariel and Orion are, how the Wood Elves got there in the first place, what exactly Athel Loren is, which were all covered in that video. So these are definitely intended to build off one another. So if you have any lingering questions about what you witnessed here in this video, that would probably be the best place to start. In any event, I hope you all enjoyed this content. Much more to come. Part 3 will be out sooner rather than later. And I hope you all please take care and have a wonderful day, week, or month, or year, or life, whichever you prefer. In any event, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. I hope you'll consider subscribing and all that jazz. And it's good to be back. Thanks, guys. I'll be seeing you around. Bye.